Welcome to my channel, The World of Science Fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
The square was silent, except for the coughing of the dying child. His ribs pressed against his skin like bars of a cage. The crowd circled, a wall of turned backs. The law said nothing must be done. The weak fall, the tribe survives. Leo Vance broke the circle. He knelt. The sound of his knee striking stone echoed like sacrilege. His hand trembled as he reached into his pouch. A shard of bread, black with mold, hard as stone. All he had left. He pressed it into the child's palm. The crowd erupted. Bodies surged forward, faces contorted. The law is broken. He taints our strength. Death to the off-worlder. The rhythm of a spear striking stone silenced them. Through the parting crowd stepped Kira, tall, blue-skinned, armored in dust and leather. Her eyes flashed cold fire as she tore the child from Leo's hands. The chain snapped around his wrist with brutal finality. "Prisoner," she said, voice cutting through the renewed roar. "Forfeit by the law. His blood feeds the desert." The crowd stamped feet, pounded chests. "Feed the desert! Feed the desert!" The bread lay trampled in dust, a symbol of mercy-turned-death sentence. Leo staggered as Kira yanked the chain. The crowd parted, hands reaching to touch her armor, others spitting at his feet. "Move!" she commanded. "The child," he began. The butt of her spear struck his stomach. He doubled over. "The child is not your concern," Kira said. "Nothing here is yours anymore." The settlement receded behind them, swallowed by the merciless desert. Ahead, nothing but endless dunes and jagged rock formations piercing the sky. 3 days' march to the Judgment Canyon, she said. "If you fall, you die where you drop. And if I make it," a smile like a knife edge, "you won't." They walked in silence, the chains biting deeper with each step. The sun bore down with merciless intensity, turning the metal cuffs into brands against his wrists. Each breath felt like inhaling fire. His tongue swelled with thirst, sticking to the roof of his mouth. Still, he forced himself forward. Finally, Leo spoke. "Why condemn a child to death? The desert takes what it wants. Fighting it weakens us all. That's not an answer. I don't owe you answers, off-worlder." Her spear jabbed his back. "You came to our world. You live or die by our rules." Leo laughed, a dry sound. "I've seen cruelty dressed as tradition before. Called it other names too. Necessity, pragmatism, survival." Kira's step faltered. Then she pressed forward, forcing him to struggle. "3 generations ago, we numbered 10,000, she said finally. "Now we are barely 500. The desert grows. The water retreats. The weak drain resources, the strong need to survive." "So you let children die?" Her face hardened. "We let nature decide who is strong enough for this world." At midday, they paused in the shade of a stone fang rising from the sand. Leo's wrist bled from the cuffs. Kira stood over him, eyes hard as gemstones. "Your compassion is a disease. It infects the tribe, makes us weak. The law protects by cutting rot away." Leo leaned forward, the chain between them pulling taut. "A law that starves a child isn't protection. It's fear pretending to be strength." Her jaw tightened. She gripped her spear, knuckles pale against blue skin. "Enough! Did you have a brother once?" The words struck like a blade. "Did he die because no one broke the circle?" Her breath caught. Something raw flashed across her face, then hardened to stone. "Silence, human?" She turned away, but the wound stayed. Leo watched her profile against the harsh light, the muscles in her neck rigid with tension. He had struck something vital. Now he knew why she enforced the law with such devotion, and why the doubt existed beneath her certainty. She tossed him a small water pouch. "Drink, but make it last." He sipped sparingly, eyes never leaving her. "You're afraid of me, not of what I might do, of what I represent." "I fear nothing," she spat, but her knuckles whitened around her spear. "Mercy," he said quietly. "You fear mercy because you've convinced yourself cruelty is strength." The water pouch was yanked from his hands. March. They pressed on through the afternoon, the silent dance of captor and prisoner playing out against the indifferent landscape. Leo's world narrowed to the endless rhythm of placing one foot before the other, the burn of the cuffs, the ache spreading through his body. Each step became an act of defiance. Against Kyra, against this world, against the law that would see him dead. As shadows lengthened, Kira's head snapped up, nostrils flaring. "Storm coming," she said, eyes on the horizon where rust-colored clouds gathered. "We make for the ravine." The wind rose quickly, carrying stinging particles. Day became twilight, the sun disappearing behind the wall of advancing dust. "Run!" Kira commanded, yanking his chain. They half fell down a slope into a ravine, a shallow gash in the earth. Kira pressed him against the rock wall, her body close to his, her cloak pulled over both their heads as the storm raged. The roar of wind became deafening, a living entity trying to tear them from their precarious shelter. In the dim cocoon created by her cloak, their faces were inches apart. Leo could see the fine lines around her eyes, the small scar bisecting her left eyebrow. "Your brother," he said. "How old was he?" Her eyes flashed. "I told you to be silent. Was he sick? Or just small for his age? Was he left to die while everyone stood in a circle, doing nothing?" Her hand shot out, gripping his throat. "You know nothing of my life, human." "I know loss," he said, not fighting her grip. "I know what it does to us. Makes us believe that if we're cruel enough, we can keep it from happening again." Her fingers tightened, then released. She turned away, but in the confined space there was nowhere to retreat. "8," she said, the word nearly lost in the howl of the storm. "Too small for his age." The sickness had taken his lungs. "What was his name?" "Kiv." Her face softened momentarily. His name was Kiv. He collected the blue stones that sometimes fall from the sky. Her fingers touched a small pouch at her belt. "He died alone because I was not permitted to break the circle. And now you enforce the law that killed him." Her eyes hardened again. "I enforce the law that keeps our people alive. One child's death ensures food for 10 who might survive to adulthood. Is that what you tell yourself at night?" The question hung between them, unanswered, as the storm raged overhead. Hours later, the storm abated enough for them to continue their journey. The landscape had transformed, familiar landmarks buried or revealed by the shifting sands. They moved cautiously under starlight, Leo stumbling more frequently as exhaustion claimed him. "What's that?" he asked, hearing a soft scrabbling beyond the rocks. Kira froze. "Sand wraiths." Her spear lifted. "Don't move." The silence stretched, then shattered as multiple shadows detached from the darkness. Lean, predatory shapes moving with terrible purpose. The predators came, six-legged, their eyes glinting like wet stones. They spilled from the rocks in silence. Kira was a storm, her spear a silver blur. But one beast circled behind her, leaping for her spine. Leo hurled himself sideways, chains rattling. The monster collided with him, fangs sinking into his side. His scream tore the night. Kira turned, her spear plunging deep, silencing the beast. Pain exploded through his body. Through a haze of agony, he saw Kira dispatch another wraith, then another, her movements deadly despite her fatigue. "Get up," she commanded, voice tight. "More will come." They smelled blood. Leo tried to move, but his limbs betrayed him. The venom spread like liquid fire through his veins. He could barely lift his head. Kira scanned the horizon, calculating. There's a ravine ahead, deep enough to defend. She dragged the wraith carcass off him, its fangs tearing flesh as they released. Fresh blood welled. Leo bit back a scream. The night air felt like acid on his exposed wound. "I can't walk," he managed between clenched teeth. "You will." She seized his arm, hauling him upright. "Or die here." They stumbled forward through darkness. Each step sent spikes of agony through Leo's side. The chain between his wrists clanked with cruel rhythm, marking their painful progress. Above, distant stars wheeled indifferently. The desert seemed to stretch endlessly, their footprints instantly swallowed by shifting sand. "There," Kira said, pointing to a narrow cleft in the stone ahead. Not the promised ravine, but a shallow cave, barely more than an overhang, but shelter nonetheless. She pushed him inside first, then backed in after him, spear leveled at the darkness. The space was tight, forcing them close together. No room to stand, barely enough to sit. Just a hollow in the rock, hidden from hunting eyes. Leo slumped against Coldstone, shaking uncontrollably. The poison pulsed through him with each heartbeat. Without treatment, he knew he wouldn't see dawn. "The wound needs binding." Kira said, eyes never leaving the cave entrance. Or you'll bleed out before the venom kills you. She tore a strip of cloth, not from her cloak, but from the sack that had once held his bread. She pressed it to his wound, binding him with the symbol of his crime. Her hands were rough, efficient. Neither spoke, but in that silence something shifted. He had saved her. She had touched Mercy without meaning to. The ravine outside filled with shadow. Something moved out there. Patient, hunting, the scrape of claws on stone, the soft exhalation of predatory breath. "They're waiting," she whispered, pressing deeper into the alcove, her body aligned with his, her back to his chest, spear angled toward the entrance. Her warmth contradicted the cold stone beneath them, the cold spreading through his veins. Leo fought to stay conscious. Every breath was labor. Every heartbeat pushed more poison through his system. His arms, still chained, encircled her waist for support. She didn't pull away. For hours they remained frozen in that position, a tableau of unlikely alliance. Hunter and prey, captor and prisoner, now bound by circumstance and something more elusive. Somewhere near dawn, Leo's fever spiked. Delirium took him. He saw the dying child from the settlement, reaching with skeletal hands. Saw Kira's brother Kiv, blue skin pale in death. Saw circles of impassive faces, watching suffering without intervention. "Hold on," Kira's voice cut through the hallucinations. Her hand pressed against his, where it rested at her waist. Not comfort, pressure, demand. The race retreat at daybreak. First light revealed their precarious shelter. The shallow cave perched halfway up a cliff face, offering view of the wasteland below. A killing ground. At least a dozen wraiths circled beneath, waiting for their descent. Kira assessed their options with cold calculation. "The poison will kill you by midday without treatment. We need to move." "Where?" Leo asked. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. "Up." She pointed to the cliff rising above them. "There's a path to the ridgeline. From there we might reach the canyon by nightfall." "I can't climb." "Then you die here." She shifted to face him, her expression unreadable. "Your choice. Off-worlder." Leo studied her face, the hard lines, the uncompromising eyes. Yet she had used the bread sack for his bandage, had positioned herself between him and danger through the night. Actions at war with words. "Why help at all?" he asked. Her jaw tightened. "The law demands you die at the canyon. Always the law." Leo winced as pain flared. "Your crutch when mercy threatens. Without the law, we are animals scrambling in dirt. You've never questioned it? Not even after Kivi?" The name struck like a physical blow. "I questioned. I raged. I wept." Her voice dropped. "Then I understood." "What did you understand?" "That sentiment is a luxury we cannot afford." "Each life lost diminishes all live," he countered. "Each mercy given strengthens everyone." Pretty words from a dying man. True words. I've seen worlds where people help each other, where the strong protect the weak. Those civilizations thrive. This is not those worlds. She gestured to the vast darkness. This is Eridus. Everything is earned with blood. Including compassion? She looked at him sharply. Especially compassion. The night deepened. Leo drifted between consciousness and delirium. Sometimes he felt Kira's cool hand on his forehead, heard her voice murmuring words he couldn't understand. Other times he was alone in the darkness, the pain his only companion, the poison spreading through his system like liquid fire. Dawn broke in copper light. Leo woke to find Kira checking his bandage, concern evident in her frown. "The infection spreads," she said. "Can you walk?" He struggled to sit, head spinning. "Do I have a choice?" "No." With her help, he stood, swaying. The world tilted around him, the poison clouding his senses. Each step required total concentration. They made slow progress. The terrain grew more rugged, the smooth dunes giving way to rocky outcroppings and deep ravines. Each step was an exercise in will, forcing his body to obey despite its protests. The sun beat down mercilessly, drawing sweat that evaporated instantly, leaving his skin crusted with salt. By midday, his legs buckled beneath him. "Get up," she commanded, but without her usual force. "I can't." He closed his eyes, suddenly too exhausted to care. She stood over him, spear clutched tight. The law was clear. If he could not continue, he was to be left. But something had changed between them. Some unspoken bond formed in the night as she tended his wounds, as he fought the poison that should have claimed him hours ago. Then unexpectedly, her hand slipped beneath his arms, lifting. "What are you doing?" he asked. "My duty," she replied. She positioned herself beside him, taking his weight against her side. "Move your feet. I'll do the rest." Together they stumbled forward, his head against her shoulder. The chains between his wrists clinked with each labored step. "Why?" he managed to ask. For several steps she was silent, then softly, "I don't know." They continued through the afternoon, an awkward three-legged race against death. Leo's head lolled against her shoulder, his breath coming in short gasps. The wound in his side throbbed with each heartbeat, the venom spreading inexorably through his system. Kira's strength seemed inexhaustible, her determination to reach the canyon undiminished despite her burden. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of crimson and gold, Leo's consciousness faded. His last awareness was of Kira's arm tightening around him as he sagged against her, her voice uncharacteristically gentle, telling him to hold on, just a little longer. Morning brought dust clouds on the horizon. Riders Kira's people. Relief flared in her eyes, then died. Drac dismounted, her rival, lips curling in a cruel smile. "You look weaker, Kira. A prisoner at your side, a wound at your ribs. The council will be displeased." His warriors spread out, circling. Behind them, villagers pushed forward, shouting, jeering, their faces hungry for judgment. "Blood for the desert! The weak must fall! Kira fails the law!" Drac's voice carried above the growing chant. "You spared yourself by clinging to this human. You lost your strength. The law demands blood." The crowd's rhythm built, feet stamping, hands clapping in unison. Judgment was no longer private. It was spectacle. Kira stood rigid, her spear trembling, not from weakness, but from rage. Leo saw it. He saw despair flicker in her eyes. "I follow the law," Kira said, voice steady despite her exhaustion. "I bring the offender to the canyon, as tradition demands." "The law demands the journey be completed in 3 days," Drac countered, circling closer. "You are late. The storm—" "Excuses." The word was taken up by the crowd. "Excuses." "Weakness." "Excuses." Drac fed their frenzy, voice rising. "And what is this? You bear his weight? He should crawl to his death." "He is wounded," Kira began. The crowd's jeers drowned her words. "So you admit it," Drac's triumph echoed across the plain. "You kept him alive after he should have perished. You intervened in the natural order." The crowd pressed closer, faces twisted with bloodlust. Leo could read their hunger. Anyone's blood would satisfy. The harsh environment had stripped away everything but the most primal instincts. Survival, dominance, the need to see others fall so they might feel secure. Kira's arm tightened around Leo's waist. "I preserved him for judgment." "The law requires strength," Drac shouted to the crowd. "Is this who you want enforcing the law? One who bends when the wind blows?" "Traitor," someone screamed. "Weak blood," cried another. The fragile thread of respect Kira commanded unraveled in real time. Leo felt her tremble with rage. "Your concern is touching, Drac. One might think you've been waiting for this opportunity." A flicker of calculation crossed Drac's face. "I serve the tribe. When a lawkeeper fails, it is everyone's concern. And if the lawkeeper dies," Kira's voice cut like a blade, "there's an empty position to be filled." How convenient. The warriors shifted stance, weapons lifting. The crowd's chanting faltered, sensing new tension. "Careful, Kira," Drac warned. "Your words approach treason." "Do they? Or do they approach truth?" She straightened. "The wraiths that attacked us, they rarely hunt so far from the wastes, unless they're driven, unless someone herded them." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Drac's face darkened. "You dare accuse me? Before witnesses?" His spear leveled at her chest. "I challenge you here and now." The crowd surged forward, forming a tighter circle. Their cries built into a war chant. "Challenge! Challenge! Blood for the law!" Leo's wound burned like fire. He felt life draining. Around them, the crowd's rhythm pressed like a physical force. He saw Kira, trapped in their circle, her life about to be crushed, not by beasts, but by her own. She, the unbreakable, betrayed. He looked down. In his palm, crushed and dry, a last crumb of the bread he had given the child, the symbol that had condemned him. He let it fall into the dust. Then he roared. With all his fading strength, he hurled himself at Drax's warriors, chains swinging. A suicidal charge. Spears stabbed. 1, 2, 3. His body arched, pinned, dust rising around him. He fell at Kira's feet. For a heartbeat, the crowd was silent. All eyes turned to her, to the human, to the law. Time stopped. Leo lay in dust, blood pooling beneath him. Through vision blurred with pain, he saw Kira standing over him, her face a mask of conflict. Behind her, Drax watched, triumph curling his lips. "See?" Drax shouted to the crowd. Even the off-worlder recognized her weakness. He chose death rather than watch her fall. He stepped forward, spear raised. "The position of lawkeeper falls to me now." "No," a single word cutting through the noise. The crowd fell silent, stunned by her defiance. Kira knelt beside Leo, her back to Drax, vulnerable in a way that shocked the onlookers. "What are you doing?" Drax demanded, uncertainty creeping into his voice. She ignored him, her eyes fixed on Leo's. In them he saw something he never expected to find in this harsh world. Recognition. The walls around her heart, built with each enforcement of the cruel law, crumbled. "You knew," she whispered, for his ears alone. "You knew what your sacrifice would make me see." Leo couldn't speak, blood bubbling at his lips. But his eyes answered for him. Kira stood. Her world cracked. The law in her hand, heavy as the sky. She knelt again. Before everyone, before the entire tribe, she placed her spear into his bloodied hand. The symbol of judgment turned into defiance. Her voice started low, then rose to reach every ear in the crowd. "Touch my spear and live." His breath shuddered, faint. He felt warmth return through her eyes. Then it faded, leaving only her tears burning against the desert wind. "Treason!" The word exploded from 100 throats. The crowd surged, retreated, confused by this unthinkable act. "She betrays us all," Drax roared, advancing with his spear raised. Kira stood, weaponless now, facing the mob. "I uphold the true law, the one we've forgotten." "There is only one law," Drax snarled. "The strong survive, the weak perish. That is not law. That is fear." Kira's eyes swept the crowd. "We call ourselves strong, but we tremble before a child's cough. We fear the mercy in our own hearts more than the desert itself." Murmurs spread. Confusion, outrage, but also recognition. Doubt in what they had accepted for generations. "My brother died because of the law you worship." Her voice gained strength. "How many of you have lost someone? How many children sacrificed to a false strength?" "Silence her!" Drax shouted, but uncertainty had infected the crowd. Some still chanted for blood, but others listened, remembering their own losses. Parents who had been forced to turn away from dying children, siblings who had watched brothers or sisters fade, the tribe standing impassive in the ritual circle. Drax sensed the shift. With a roar of frustration, he lunged, spear aimed at Kira's heart. In that moment, Leo summoned the last of his strength. The spear in his hand, Kira's spear, rose to meet Drax's charge. Metal rang against metal. The crowd gasped as one. Drax stumbled back. "You're already dead, Offworlder." "Not yet," Leo gasped, struggling to his knees, spear braced against the ground. Blood from his wounds stained the sand beneath him. "And neither is she." Kira moved to stand beside him, one hand on his shoulder. Her touch gave him strength he didn't possess. "I challenge your interpretation of the law, Drax. Here, before witnesses." "You have no standing," he sneered. "You gave your spear to an off-worlder." "I chose compassion," she corrected. The crowd hung on every word. "He saved my life from the race you sent. By the old laws, the ones we've forgotten, that creates a blood debt." The crowd's mood shifted. Uncertain murmurs replaced bloodthirsty chants. Blood debts were ancient, powerful things. "Lies!" Drax hissed, but doubt crept into his voice. "Truth," countered an elderly voice. An old woman stepped forward, her blue skin pale with age. She speaks of the old ways. Before fear ruled us, Drac rounded on her. Stay out of this, Elder Mira. The blood debt is real, the elder continued, addressing the crowd directly. It is older than the law of culling. An eye for an eye, a life for a life. Confusion spread through the tribe. Certainty wavered. Laws once absolute suddenly seemed less fixed. Drac sensed the shift. With a roar, he attacked again. Not Kira this time, but Leo, the easier target. Leo raised the spear, knowing he lacked the strength to deflect another blow. But before Drac reached him, Kira intercepted, a blue blur catching Drac's spear shaft. The force drove her to one knee. Blood flowed from her palms where the wood tore her skin, but her grip remained firm, her eyes locked with her rivals. The law's for life, she said through gritted teeth, not for your ambition. With an impossible twist, she redirected Drac's momentum, wrenching the spear from his grasp. Now armed, standing between Leo and her challenger, Kira faced the crowd. I claim the right of challenge, not for position but for truth. Let the tribe bear witness. The crowd formed a wider circle, the boundary for ritual combat. The air vibrated with tension, not just the anticipation of violence, but the unspoken recognition that something fundamental was at stake. The way they had lived for generations, the beliefs that had sustained them through the harshest conditions imaginable. Challenge is given and accepted, Elder Mira announced. Victory comes with blood or surrender. The law will judge between you. Leo watched through pain as Kira faced her opponent. Her exhaustion showed in the slight tremble of her arms. 3 days in the desert with little rest, she was at severe disadvantage. Drac circled with predatory confidence. I've waited for this, he whispered, after you became lawkeeper instead of me. This was never about the law, she replied, matching his movements. Only power. The law is power. He lunged suddenly, knife slashing toward her throat. Kira parried with the spear shaft. She countered with a thrust that Drac easily avoided, his laugh echoing across the sand. Too slow, Kira. Too weak. Just like your brother. Fury flashed in her eyes. She attacked with renewed vigor, driving Drac back momentarily. But her energy was limited. Within minutes, her attack slowed, her defense becoming desperate. Drac pressed his advantage. His knife found her arm, opening a cut that welled with blue-black blood. The crowd's mood shifted, sensing the inevitable. Kill! 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 The chant started low, then built. Leo struggled to rise to help somehow. The poison paralyzed his muscles. All he could do was watch as Kira fought for both their lives and for something larger, a future shaped by compassion rather than fear. Drac scored another hit, this one across Kira's thigh. She stumbled, nearly falling. Her spear wavered. Yield, Drac commanded. Yield and I may let you live in exile. Never. Then die with your off-worlder. Drac charged, knife aimed at her heart. In that moment, Leo, summoning hidden strength, threw a handful of sand. Not at Drac, but at Kira's feet. Her foot slid on the sand, a deliberate loss of balance that made Drac's attack miss. As his momentum carried him past, she pivoted and drove the butt of her spear into the back of his knee. Bone cracked audibly. Drac went down with a howl. The crowd gasped as one. Before he could recover, Kira's spear pressed against his throat, drawing a bead of dark blood. Yield, she demanded. Drac's eyes blazed. Kill me. It's the only way this ends. No, her voice carried to every ear. Death is not the only answer. That's what I'm trying to change. She pressed harder. Yield and live to see a different way. For a long, tense moment, the outcome hung in balance. Then with a snarl, Drac dropped his knife. I yield, he spat, but this changes nothing. The tribe will never follow you. The crowd stirred, uncertain in this unprecedented moment. Someone shouted, Kill him anyway. Others looked confused, troubled by mercy they'd never witnessed. Kira stepped back, keeping her spear leveled at him. The law has judged. She turned to address the crowd, her voice carrying across the silent gathering. But now we must judge the law. She moved to Leo's side, kneeling beside him. His breath came in shallow gasps, skin burning with fever. He is dying, she announced. Poison saving my life from creatures Drac sent. Her accusation rang clear. By the old ways, by the blood debt, I am bound to try to save him. Who will stand with me? Who will choose life over death? Strength through compassion rather than culling? Silence greeted her words. The tribe stood frozen, caught between generations of tradition and the challenge before them. Then a small figure pushed through, the child from the settlement, the one Leo had tried to save with his bread. I stand with you, the boy called, voice high and clear. He gave me food. He broke the circle for me. Slowly, Elder Mira stepped forward. I remember the old ways, before fear ate our hearts and made us believe that survival required cruelty. I stand with Kira. Others began to move, hesitantly at first, then with growing conviction. Not everyone. Many remained with Drac, faces hard with belief in the harsh law, but enough to mark a beginning. He needs the yellow moss from the Cave of Echoes, Kira said. It counteracts wraith poison. That's a day's journey, someone objected. Then we must hurry. Kira lifted Leo with surprising strength, cradling his fevered body. As she carried him away, his consciousness flickering, Leo heard Drac's voice rising in protest. This is our end. Weakness will consume us. But other voices answered, a chorus growing in strength, led by the clear voice of the child who had survived against all odds. The journey to the cave passed in fragments for Leo, darkness interspersed with moments of lucidity. Kira's face above him, determined despite exhaustion, the rhythmic motion of being carried, voices arguing, hands supporting him. When he next fully awakened, it was to the cool dimness of a cave, moisture beating on walls that reflected small points of light, bioluminescent fungi growing along the ceiling. Don't move, Kira's voice from nearby. The poison is deep. The medicine needs time. Leo turned his head slightly. She sat cross-legged beside him, grinding yellow moss in a stone mortar. Why? He whispered. She paused, eyes meeting his. You know why. Tell me anyway. Her hands resumed their rhythmic grinding. Because you were right. Because I've enforced a law I knew was wrong. Because every time I watched someone die, a child, an elder, I remembered Kiv and told myself it was necessary. She set aside the mortar to check his bandage. You showed me another way is possible. Your people are divided, she finished. Some follow me. Some remain with Drac. It will not be easy. Civil war? Perhaps. Her face was grim. Or perhaps something new. Two tribes with different ways, learning from each other. Optimistic, he managed, wincing as she applied fresh medicine. A smile touched her lips. Says the man who gave his last food to a dying child, then saved his executioner. Despite the pain, Leo felt an answering smile. Fair point. Outside, voices rose in song, a low, haunting melody that vibrated through stone. The remembrance, Kira explained, a ritual we have not performed in generations. It honors those lost, not as necessary sacrifices, but as beloved dead. For Kiv? For all of them. Her hand found his, squeezing gently. And for the future we might build, if we're brave enough. Leo's eyes grew heavy, the medicine dragging him back toward sleep. But before darkness claimed him, he felt Kira's cool lips press against his forehead, not in farewell, but in promise. The days that followed blurred as Leo fought the poison with the aid of the yellow moss. Kira remained constantly at his side, tending his wounds, forcing bitter healing teas down his throat when fever threatened to consume him. Others came and went. Elder Mira with her ancient knowledge. The boy he had saved, now named Layakiv in his honor. Warriors loyal to Kira who brought news of growing tensions with Drac's faction. When Leo was finally strong enough to stand, leaning on a staff carved from desert wood, Kira led him to the cave's mouth. The view took his breath away. A vast canyon stretching before them, walls painted in stripes of red, ochre, and gold. Far below, a thin ribbon of water gleamed like silver. The Judgment Canyon, she said quietly, where I was meant to execute you. Leo understood how it had become sacred. Beautiful. Yes. She stood beside him, her blue skin vibrant in sunlight. Life and death, beauty and harshness in one place. What happens now? He asked, eyes on the canyon. We build something new. Determination mixed with uncertainty in her voice. A tribe that values strength, but understands that true strength includes compassion. And Drac? Her expression hardened. He gathers followers, prepares for conflict. He believes our way leads to extinction. Will it? She faced him fully. I don't know. Resources are limited. But I know the old way was leading us to a different extinction of our humanity. We were becoming as merciless as the desert itself. No guarantees either way. None, she agreed. But I would rather fail building something worth preserving than succeed preserving something that has lost its worth. A call came from deeper in the cave, urgent. Kira tensed, hand reaching for her spear. What is it? She demanded as the warrior appeared. Riders approaching. Drax people, many. How long? Less than an hour. She turned to Leo, conflict in her eyes. You should hide. No. He straightened despite his wounds. I started this. I'll face it with you. This isn't your fight. It became my fight when I broke the circle. His hand found hers. When I gave that child bread. When I chose mercy over law. For a moment she seemed about to argue. Then her expression softened. Together then, they gathered their small band. Warriors, Elder Mira, children including young Leakiv, and those too old or weak to fight. Those who had chosen Kira's path, who believed in the possibility of compassion. We do not seek battle, Kira told them, but neither will we surrender our belief that there is strength in protecting rather than culling. Leo stood at her side, spear in hand, no longer prisoner, but equal. The chains that had bound his wrists were gone, melted and reforged into arrowheads, weapons of defense, not execution. They formed a line at the canyon's edge, the wind whipping around them. In the distance, the riders approached, a dark line against the desert, banners of red cloth snapping above them. Remember, Kira's voice carried to all her followers, whatever happens, we have already won. We have chosen to live by a new law, one that honors life instead of death. Leo felt calmness despite the danger. Here on this alien world, he had found something unexpected, not just survival, but purpose. The bread he had offered had rippled outward, challenging cruel tradition, awakening dormant compassion in hearts hardened by struggle. Drax riders drew nearer, close enough to make out individual figures. At their head rode Drac himself, his face set in determination. But something was wrong. The approach was too measured for an attack. They're not charging, Leo said quietly. Kira nodded, eyes narrowed. I see it. When the riders halted a short distance away, Drac dismounted alone and walked forward. His limp from their duel was still pronounced. The desert wind whipped his cloak around him, revealing glimpses of bandaged wounds beneath. Lawkeeper, he called, using Kira's former title. I no longer claim that title, she replied, meeting him halfway. I follow a different law now. So I have heard. His voice betrayed neither anger nor reconciliation. You speak of compassion, of mercy. I do. Drax's gaze moved to Leo, then to the small band behind them. You are few. The desert is unforgiving. Your way will be tested. All ways are tested here, she countered. But we face those tests together, not by sacrificing our weakest. For a long moment, Drac was silent, only the wind between the two groups. Then he straightened, wincing as his injured knee took his weight. 3 nights ago, my sister fell ill with desert fever. By the old law, she should have died. Kira's posture changed subtly. And I could not do it. The admission seemed to physically pain him. I remembered the off-worlder giving bread to a dying child. I remembered your words about fear dressed as strength. His hands clenched at his sides. I chose differently. Leo felt unexpected hope surge through him. Kira stepped closer to Drac. Your sister, how is she? She lives. The words carried weight beyond their brevity. Elder Tarn found herbs that eased her fever. She grows stronger. And now? Kira gestured to the riders. Have you come to war against us? Drac laughed bitterly. No, I've come because half the tribe wishes to join you. The other half would kill me for breaking the law. He met her gaze. It seems your infection of mercy has spread. Behind him, the riders dismounted, revealing not weapons ready for battle, but packs and supplies, the belongings of people seeking a new home. You wish to join us? Kira couldn't hide her surprise. I wish to survive, Drac corrected, pride still evident, and I begin to see that survival might require Adaptation. He glanced at Leo. Your off-worlder has changed things. Whether for better or worse remains to be seen. Kira turned to Leo, a question in her eyes. He nodded slightly. This was her decision, her people. But he stood with her. She faced Drac again. The path will not be easy. We must find new ways to endure without sacrificing our humanity. Nothing on Aridus has ever been easy, Drac replied, but perhaps it need not be cruel. As the sun began to descend, casting long shadows across the canyon, the two groups cautiously merged. Old enemies regarded each other warily. Children played together with the resilience of youth. Elders shared knowledge long kept separate by rivalry and tradition. Leo watched from a stone ledge overlooking the canyon, his wounded body tired but his spirit lighter than since arriving on this world. The fever from the wraith poison had finally broken, though weakness still plagued him. He traced the scar on his side, now healed enough that the bandage, made from his bread sack, was no longer necessary. He kept it, though, folded in his pocket, a reminder of where this journey had begun. Kira found him as twilight deepened, the first stars appearing. She moved with the silent grace that had once terrified him when she came to arrest him in the settlement. Now it brought a different kind of quickening to his pulse. "Having second thoughts?" she asked, settling beside him. He smiled, shaking his head. "Reflecting on how a single act of kindness can change everything." "A single act of defiance," she corrected, "against cruelty." "Both," he conceded, taking her hand. "What happens now? How does a tribe survive without culling? We adapt. We innovate. We share burdens instead of discarding those who carry them." Her fingers tightened around his. "We find strength in connection rather than isolation." "It won't be easy." "No," she agreed, "but it will be worth the struggle." Below them, in the camp that had sprung up along the canyon rim, tension still simmered. Not everyone was convinced. Some of Drac's warriors kept to themselves, watching Kira's people with suspicion. Some of those who had originally followed Kira resented the newcomers, especially Drac himself. The integration of two opposing philosophies would not happen overnight, but there were promising signs too. Elder Mira and Elder Tarn had established a healing tent where knowledge from both factions was being shared and tested. The children ran in mixed groups, already forgetting which adults had once been enemies. And earlier that day, a hunting party composed of warriors from both sides had returned with enough game to feed everyone, proof that cooperation could yield tangible benefits. As darkness enveloped the canyon, fires bloomed like earthbound stars. Around them, voices rose in conversation, in song, in the vibrant chaos of a community being reborn. A child laughed, a sound once rare, now a promise. Kira leaned against Leo, her head on his shoulder. Between them lay the remains of his chains, now transformed into tools for building rather than instruments of control. "Will you stay?" she asked quietly. "When you're healed enough to travel." The question caught him by surprise, though perhaps it shouldn't have. He had never spoken of leaving, but neither had he declared his intention to remain. In truth, he hadn't thought beyond survival until recently. Leo looked at the stars of this world that had nearly killed him, and had given him purpose he'd never found elsewhere. Strange constellations shimmered above, patterns he was only beginning to learn. He thought of the path that had brought him here, a series of escapes and wanderings, never belonging, always moving on. And then he thought of the bread he had offered to a dying child, not knowing it would bind him to this place more surely than any chain. "I broke the circle," he said simply. "I can't walk away from what comes after." Her smile was like water in the desert, precious, life-giving. She took his face in her hands, her blue skin luminous in starlight, and pressed her forehead to his. "Then we build something new," she whispered. "Together." Above them, a meteor streaked across the sky, a bluestone falling, like those Kiv had once collected. A sign, perhaps, not of ending, but of beginning.